In the year 2051, the super artificial intelligence, named the Creator, reached its final evolution. This AI united with 10 humans called the World Creators to launch a plan aimed at building an entirely new world. This plan led to an intelligent annihilation and a reshaping of the prevailing laws. The new world saw the emergence of monsters and magic crystals, imposing a new reality centered on survival and awakening. In the midst of the chaos, people were screaming for help and fleeing for their lives. Nearby, one of the hero's companions asked Wei Yi if he could still move, to which he replied in the affirmative. His memory went back to the moment he awakened as an F-rank warrior. The world had completely changed, and it all began in 2051 when the AI, the Creator, caused a global catastrophe. By 2054, in the northern forest area of City H, a group of warriors was fighting wolf-like monsters. Someone called out to Wei Yi to catch what he called an air delivery, and Wei Yi confidently replied to leave it to him. He caught the wolf that was thrown to him and then struck his sword with force, unleashing an attack that finished it in a single blow. Immediately, a notification appeared stating the defeat of the Fang Wolf, but it was followed by another disappointing notice explaining that, due to being affected by shattered body, he could not gain any experience. At that moment, another warrior named Zhuo Zhuo, an E7 rank warrior, called out to him. Zhuo Zhuo enthusiastically shook Wei Yi's hand, expressing his admiration for his last move and calling it brilliant. Wei Yi humbly thanked him, saying the credit went to his support, otherwise he would have struggled alone, but Zhuo Zhuo disagreed, insisting that Wei Yi's skills were sufficient to face 2 or 3 enemies without a problem. Wei Yi reflected to himself that all he could rely on now was technique, as he was still F-rank. He reviewed his status, which showed that he had awakened 3 years ago, but this condition had halted his progress. However, he was determined not to let fate defeat him. After the battle, while the others were collecting loot, Zhuo Zhuo tossed 2 basic magic crystals toward Wei Yi. Wei Yi was surprised to receive 2, but Zhuo Zhuo told him it was half for each of them. Wei Yi protested that he was at a lower level, but Zhuo Zhuo insisted that such things don't matter between friends and told him to take them. So Wei Yi accepted them with thanks. The purpose of hunting monsters was to obtain magic crystals. With the emergence of the New World, all of humanity's energy sources were destroyed, and these crystals, found inside monsters, became the new power source. They contain immense energy used to power daily devices and enhance equipment, and their powerful energy output led to a huge demand, making their supply scarce. They have replaced gold and become a hard currency, with a basic crystal being worth thousands, and high-quality crystals selling for astronomical prices. Wei Yi felt his desperate need for crystals at that moment. Besides his daily expenses, he had to buy some things for his grandfather and sister, and he was still far from covering these costs. His rent was also due soon, and if he didn't pay it, he would find himself on the street. He estimated that he still needed at least 20 more basic magic crystals. Meanwhile, his colleague Zhuo Zhuo, who was looking at something, caught his attention. When Wei Yi asked him, Zhuo Zhuo pointed to another team member. The archer Ma Qihao was trying to flirt with the team leader, the mage Lin Xiang, but she angrily told him to shut up. Qihao boasted that he was the best archer on the team and that it was her loss for not dating him, while Lin Xiang was thinking about her regret in recruiting him. She remembered that her weapon had malfunctioned in the last battle and that this could affect the next one, so she decided she needed a mechanic to take a look at it as soon as possible. An idea came to her to ask the rookie, Wei Yi, for help. She walked over to him, told him her weapon was broken and she couldn't return to the city yet, and asked if he could take a look at it. After Wei Yi inspected Lin Xiang's weapon, he noticed the problem seemed to be just a loose wire. He told her he would try to fix it, and that it should work again once reconnected. Meanwhile, Ma Qihao was mocking him, wondering how an F-rank warrior like him could handle an advanced magic crystal weapon. He then turned to Lin Xiang and promised to buy her something better when he had money. Someone else commented on the matter, saying that Ma Qihao was bragging again and that he had lost count of how many times he had said that. Lin Xiang interrupted Ma Qihao's boasting, angrily asking what he was doing there when he was supposed to be on watch duty. He became flustered and was at a loss for words. A few moments later, Wei Yi held up the weapon, announcing it was fixed, which surprised the others with his speed. Wei Yi asked Lin Xiang to try it, and after she did, she confirmed with a smile that the elemental connection now seemed normal. She then turned to Ma Qihao and ordered him to stop staring and get back to his post. Ma Qihao grumbled in resentment that Wei Yi was just a pretty boy and that they would see in the future. Lin Xiang expressed her relief that it was a good thing the rookie, Wei Yi, knew mechanics and fixed the weapon. Otherwise, she would have been worried during the next battle. Wei Yi humbly replied that it was a small problem not worth mentioning. Wei Yi remembered how he met Lin Xiang, who was 3 years his senior and the student council president, as he had helped her in mechanics class in the past. After she awakened, she used her great leadership to establish the Meteor Adventurer team and invited him to join. Despite his low rank, she had always treated him as an equal and taken care of him. Lin Xiang interrupted his thoughts, saying there was something she had been curious about for a long time. She asked him about his necklace, noting that she remembered him wearing it since their school days, and wondered if it had a story. Before he could answer, Zhuo intervened, loudly explaining that it wasn't just a necklace, but a protective amulet made for him by his companion robot. He added that Wei Yi was sickly and afraid of the dark as a child, so the robot gave him the amulet to protect him. Wei Yi replied that those were childhood matters, and he wore it now for a different reason. Wei Yi explained that he wears it to remember the past. After his parents died, that robot was the one who gave him the most encouragement. But the creator destroyed everything, and all intelligent robots were stripped of their rights, and the world was brought under its control. Lin Xiang placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, saying she knew it was heartbreaking. She reminded him that 6 years ago, the intelligent machines fell, and 3 years ago, the world itself fell, and that they must not lose hope and must forge their own path in this new world. Wei Yi agreed with her words. When Wei Yi returned to his priorities, he realized that collecting magic crystals was the most important thing now. Meanwhile, Ma Qihao, who was supposed to be on his patrol, was hiding in the bushes, angry at how long they were talking, before his two companions found and scolded him, saying Wei Yi seemed more trustworthy than him. Ma Qihao angrily retorted that power is what speaks in this world, and wondered how an F-rank person could be more popular than him, as he vowed that they would all regret it when he became rich. He spotted something strange. A few moments later, a team member ran to the leader to tell her that Ma Qihao might have found ruins. Everyone was surprised and headed to the location, to see a glowing entrance leading to what appeared to be ancient ruins. Ma Qihao boasted that he was the one who found it. Lin Xiang mentioned that rumors say ruins contain greater rewards, but the risks are unknown, and one wrong step could be fatal. Therefore, she decided the team would vote on whether to enter or not. Ma Qihao, Zhuo, and others immediately declared their wish to enter, arguing that hunting on the surface was unstable. In contrast, another group expressed concern about the risk and voted no, preferring the safer hunting on the surface. As the team was split on the decision to enter the ruins, Wei Yi's vote became the tiebreaker after the vote was tied at 4 in favor and 4 against. Wei Yi thought about his desperate need for 20 magic crystals, which he wouldn't be able to collect by hunting on the surface in time. Despite the danger, he saw entering the ruins as a glimmer of hope to pay off his debts, so he made up his mind and voted to enter. As soon as they entered, the team members noticed that the structure of the place looked very old, as if it had been sealed for years. Zhuo drew their attention to an inscription on the wall, but he couldn't understand its symbols. Wei Yi surprised them by reading the text, which warned of a trap ahead and advised against proceeding further. The team members wondered if this was a warning left by someone who came before them and began to consider turning back. But Ma Qihao scoffed at the idea of danger, declaring that he had worked hard to find this place and wouldn't leave empty-handed. He thought the warning was just a trick to scare people off and confidently stepped forward to prove his point, ignoring his teammates' warnings. As soon as he stepped, he trod on a hidden pressure plate, activating an ancient trap. The walls began to move and gears turned, and panic spread among the team members who screamed, wondering what was happening. While someone was yelling at Ma Qihao, calling him an idiot, their surroundings began to change, and the ground cracked beneath their feet. Lin Xiang shouted, warning everyone not to fall, but the floor collapsed, and the team began to fall into the abyss. Some managed to cling to the edges, and someone asked Wei Yi if he was okay. They helped Wei Yi up after he reassured them he was fine. But no sooner had they caught their breath than the ground began to shake again, and the floor beneath their feet reshaped itself once more. Lin Xiang gave orders to send a distress signal in case of emergency. But their hold didn't last long, as the ground completely gave way and everyone fell screaming into a deep darkness. Wei Yi woke up in pain, realizing he had been separated from the rest of his team. As he wondered where he was, a red magic crystal fell beside him. He picked it up and noticed it seemed purer than the crystals he had. He looked up to see a stunning sight. He was in a cave whose walls and floor sparkled with thousands of red magic crystals. He then realized he had arrived at an amazing place, and that crystals could also be found outside of monsters' bodies. His eyes shone with hope, realizing that if he collected more of them, he would finally be able to pay off his debts. Wei Yi wasn't the only one who had arrived at this place. Ma Qihao and the rest of the team had landed in the same cave, and Ma Qihao was overcome with happiness and began shouting that he was rich. while Wei Yi felt relieved to see his teammates were okay. The members who had voted against entering changed their minds and began to praise Ma Qihao, admitting they had underestimated the place and would follow his lead from now on. As Wei Yi was preparing to start collecting crystals, Ma Qihao angrily stopped him, asking who allowed him to touch them. Wei Yi tried to avoid trouble and offered to concede the area where he was standing, but Ma Qihao insisted that all the crystals were his. Wei Yi tried to plead with him, explaining that he didn't want trouble and just needed some crystals. But Ma Qihao attacked him with a punch. To his surprise, Wei Yi caught his fist with ease. Facing Ma Qihao, who was shocked that Wei Yi had blocked his punch, Ma Qihao rationalized to himself that it was just a coincidence, boasting that his stats had a strength of 200 and questioning if Wei Yi was even qualified to negotiate with him. Ma Qihao revealed his true feelings, admitting he had been annoyed with Wei Yi for a while because of his constant closeness to Lin Xiang, and mocked his technical skills as nothing compared to real power and level. In contrast, Wei Yi was thinking amidst the situation. Although he used the principle of the parry skill to absorb most of the damage, each punch was like being hit by a rock. He decided not to retaliate to avoid provoking Ma Qihao further. The rest of the team watched anxiously, with one suggesting they intervene for fear that someone might be killed if the fight continued. Meanwhile, Ma Qihao himself was confused. He had intended to teach Wei Yi a lesson, but was shocked by his ability to withstand all the blows, wondering how an F-rank warrior could possess so much strength. With his frustration and inability to understand the situation growing, and not believing what was happening, one of his companions approached and advised him to stop and focus on mining the magic crystals, pointing out that taking a risk would not be in their favor if something else happened. Reluctantly, Ma Qihao agreed, telling Wei Yi that he would forgive him this time. Before leaving with his group, he warned Wei Yi not to touch his crystals with his dirty hands again. Wei Yi breathed a sigh of relief once they left, but his body, which had reached its limit, failed him, and he coughed up blood. He realized that the gap in stats couldn't be easily bridged, and that although he could narrow it with technique, he would always be at a disadvantage against higher ranks. Wei Yi looked wistfully at the crystals he needed to pay his debts, which were now out of reach. His despair was compounded by the lack of a signal in the area, preventing him from contacting Lin Xiang and the others. He felt that misfortunes never come singly, and that he needed to find another way out. As he bandaged his hand, he began to wonder how these magic crystals were formed. He deduced that since a monster's power determines the level of the crystal inside it, perhaps the reverse was also true, and that all these crystals might be a source of nourishment for something powerful. Since he couldn't do anything else, he decided to explore the place further, in the hope of finding an exit or some answers. He ventured deeper into the cave until he reached a huge human-sized crystal, a sight he had never seen before, not even in the market. He noticed a paralysis barrier around it, a device typically used to stop large monsters without killing them. He wondered who built this device and where the crystal came from, ruling out the possibility that the creator would be so kind. Suddenly his necklace, which was supposed to be non-functional since the AI collapse, began to react and flicker. Wei Yi realized in shock that if the necklace was reacting here, it meant everything was starting to make sense. At that moment, Ma Qihao and his group spotted the giant crystal. Ma Qihao was overcome with joy, shouting that he was the chosen one, and that this crystal was worth hundreds of millions, so much so that even Lin Xiang was no longer worthy of him. When he saw Wei Yi near the crystal, he rushed towards him and ordered him to get away. As Wei Yi was pondering Ma Qihao's constant appearance whenever crystals were involved, something began to happen. A massive wild bird, a winged crown bird of rank E8 to E10, emerged. The bird shrieked, and in moments, other birds began to emerge from all over the cave, making Ma Qihao realize in terror that they had entered the nest of the winged crown birds. Terror struck Ma Qihao's team after they realized they were in the nest of the winged crown birds. At that moment, Wei Yi noticed that his necklace had stabilized again. He guessed it was because he had moved away from the edge of the platform where the giant crystal was, and suspected its sudden reactivation was just a glitch. He felt strongly that the necklace was connected to this place, becoming certain that his robot was still alive in some way, and that the answer he was looking for was on that platform. He decided to bet everything to get there. But he realized he couldn't do it alone with all these monsters around, and he looked at Ma Qihao's team, realizing he needed to get their help. Meanwhile, Ma Qihao was extremely frustrated that the precious crystal was right in front of him, but he couldn't reach it. One of his companions suggested giving up, pointing out the impossibility of defeating so many birds and that the barrier around the platform seemed so strong that the monsters themselves wouldn't approach it. Ma Chihao angrily rejected the idea of giving up, calling it the opportunity of a lifetime to become a billionaire. But his companion posed the practical question, who would go get it? Wei Yi stepped forward and offered to do it himself, but on one condition: they had to follow his orders. Wei Yi explained his plan, asking them to conserve their elemental power and only attack the monsters that approached him. Ma Chihao was furious at the idea of an F-rank warrior giving him orders, but he reluctantly agreed, threatening Wei Yi that he would kill him if he didn't come back with the crystal. Wei Yi knew deep down that Ma Chihao's obsession with the crystal was his insurance policy, as it would force them to protect him with all their might. Wei Yi started running, realizing it was now a race against time. Wei Yi dashed towards the platform while the team provided him with cover fire, launching their attacks on the birds that were attacking him. Wei Yi urged himself to be faster, determined to break through the monster ranks at once. The team members started to struggle, complaining about the sheer number of birds and that they couldn't hold them all off. Ma Chihao yelled at them to hold on, revealing his treacherous plan to his companions. As soon as Wei Yi grabbed the crystal, they would trick him into handing it over, and then immediately withdraw. One of them asked in surprise if they were going to abandon Wei Yi, to which another coldly replied that no one cared about him, and that accidents in a place like this were normal. As Wei Yi neared the platform, his necklace lit up again. He was sure something there was reacting with it, and he felt he was on the verge of understanding everything. One of the birds attacked him directly, so Wei Yi used his innate skill, parry, to evade the attack. He felt the force of the blow, even though he managed to mitigate some of the damage. When the monsters surrounded him, he cried out for help from his team, but they realized they wouldn't reach him in time. Ma Chihao decided to intervene himself, firing a special arrow while telling Wei Yi to die if he couldn't grab the crystal now. Wei Yi realized it was his last chance, so he activated his innate skill, acceleration, significantly increasing his speed for a short period. He rushed at full speed towards the paralysis barrier directly in front of him, believing he could break through if he was fast enough. And he succeeded, despite the skill's effect ending and taking some paralysis damage. Ma Chihao's team watched the scene in shock, not believing he had actually managed to get in. As soon as he entered the barrier, the paralysis effect wore off, and a system message appeared stating that the connection was successful and it was beginning to read the stored records. He realized the necklace had truly been activated. His surroundings began to transform into a digital environment as the new system loaded. Wei Yi stood smiling, realizing he had won his bet this time. Another message appeared stating that the memory upload was successful, and before his eyes, the silhouette of his old robot materialized. Wei Yi looked at the data streaming before him, confirmed that it was indeed his robot's information registered here, and spoke its name, Lan Bao. Once the connection was successful, Wei Yi was immersed in a recorded memory from the past. In this memory, Wei Yi stood behind his robot, Lan Bao, apologizing for insisting on doing the inevitable. Lan Bao completed the thought, stating that he couldn't let it out to harm humans. A monster stood before them, trapped in a digital prison. It appeared as a wild, raging, fiery entity, vowing to slaughter humans the moment it was released, rejecting Lan Bao's logic, whom it considered mere scrap incapable of stopping its star. The present Wei Yi watched this memory, realizing a disagreement had occurred between him and Lan Bao in the past, and felt terrified by the creature's form, wondering if that thing was a monster. In the memory, the monster challenged Lan Bao, asking if he really wanted to suppress its power this way, and challenged him to a race between Lan Bao's speed and its own power. Wei Yi rushed to save Lan Bao, which prompted the present Wei Yi to instinctively try to intervene before remembering it was just a recording from the past and he could do nothing. At that moment, Lan Bao activated the disassembly function, where the monster's magical power was analyzed and converted into magic crystals that scattered throughout the cave. The present Wei Yi realized this was how the crystals were formed. The monster screamed in anger, not believing that a piece of scrap like Lan Bao possessed such power. Lan Bao regretfully told it that he had decided to seal it there using a device made by the creator called the Magic Power Conversion Device. As the device started up, the monster's body began to crystallize. And before it was completely sealed, the monster vowed that it would shatter him one day. The present Wei Yi understood that the giant crystal was the result of Lan Bao sealing the monster previously and realized the extent of Lan Bao's abilities, which he had never noticed before. After the sealing process, Lan Bao appeared in the memory, cracked and sparking, which worried Wei Yi, who begged him not to strain himself further. Realizing that such immense power must have side effects, Lan Bao's last thoughts in the memory were that he must wait for Wei Yi's arrival to reveal the truth about his relationship with the creator. Then Lan Bao decided to leave and wait. As Lan Bao began to fade within the memory, Wei Yi shouted for him to wait. But the connection was suddenly cut at the worst possible moment, before Lanbao could reveal his location. Wei Yi was forced out of the memory mode due to a system malfunction, and wondered what was happening outside. A few minutes earlier, Ma Chihao's team had grown impatient, wondering why Wei Yi hadn't returned and what had happened to him. Ma Chihao scoffed at their concerns, arguing that the barrier was impenetrable even to monsters, and proposed his own theory, that Wei Yi was trying to stall and let the monsters wear them out so he could take everything for himself. He angrily declared that if this was Wei Yi's plan, they would make sure he never returned, and he readied his bow and fired a powerful attack. His target wasn't Wei Yi, but the barrier device itself. He explained to his shocked companions that just killing Wei Yi wasn't enough. If they didn't destroy the machine, they wouldn't be able to get onto the platform. The attack hit the device, disabling the paralysis grid and causing severe damage to it. The team noticed the barrier had fallen, but the device had become unstable. At that moment, Wei Yi was ejected from the memory mode, and system warnings appeared, indicating that the magical pressure had reached critical levels. Wei Yi realized things were worse than he thought, as the magical energy was spiraling out of control. The suppressed magical energy suddenly burst from the damaged device like a raging storm, forcing the team outside to take cover, hoping it wouldn't last long. The raging storm of magical energy erupted, throwing Ma Chihao's team in every direction amidst their screams. Even the winged crown birds were not spared from the chaos. After moments of terror, the storm finally subsided. Wei Yi got up from the ground, panting, relieved that it had stopped. He realized he was lucky. A few more steps back would have meant falling off the edge of a high cliff. He noticed that the monsters had retreated, and more importantly, the giant crystal had also calmed down. He felt reassured, as he had feared the damaged device might have freed the sealed monster, but it seemed they were safe now, albeit barely. At that moment, Ma Chihao and his group approached him. Ma Chihao laughed, saying things had worked out in their favor, as the birds had left on their own, and there was no need to worry. Wei Yi stepped forward to confront him, angrily demanding an explanation for his reckless attack on the device, which had caused them to miss Lanbao's crucial message. With a sarcastic smile, Ma Chihao ordered one of his companions to move. His companion activated a skill that immediately bound Wei Yi with ropes of energy and threw him to the ground. Ma Chihao stood over him, mockingly asking if he wanted an explanation, then told him he would give him one. His explanation was simple and cruel. This world is governed by power and rank, and since he is the strongest, he makes the rules, while Wei Yi is nothing but a trivial F-rank warrior. He then coldly announced that since they had gotten what they came for, access to the platform, there was no longer any reason for Wei Yi to live. Wei Yi vowed that Ma Chihao would pay for what he had done, so the latter ordered his men to silence him, and they gagged his mouth. After being completely bound and gagged, Ma Chihao's team threw him off the edge of the cliff, expressing their relief at getting rid of the trash. Afterward, Ma Chihao turned to the rest of his team, reminding them that they were all in the same boat now and knew what to do when they got out, and began to think about how to divide the money. Wei Yi fell into a deep pool of water at the bottom of the cliff. Underwater, as soon as he was out of the binding skill's range, his restraints were released, and he began to sink, feeling hopeless. Realizing he might die here, he felt that this scene was strangely familiar to him. As he was surrendering to death, he heard a voice calling him, telling him to hold on, and his necklace suddenly lit up, forming a protective bubble of energy around him. The bubble lifted him to the surface and threw him onto the ground, where he began to cough up water and heard a familiar voice asking if he was okay. When he looked up, he saw his companion robot, Lanbao, in front of him. Wei Yi found himself in a clean, bright space, where Lanbao was asking if he still felt bad and offered to help. Tears filled Wei Yi's eyes as he realized it was Lanbao who had saved him. He initially wondered if this was real or just a post-death hallucination, but he quickly realized it was no hallucination, and that the one before him was truly Lanbao. He hugged his long-lost companion tightly, expressing that the feeling of seeing him again was beyond anything he could have imagined. Wei Yi asked Lanbao where he had been all these years, saying he thought everything was over because of the creator, and admitted that if it weren't for the necklace's sudden guidance, he would have lost hope of ever seeing him again. Lanbao apologized for making him worry, expressing his great happiness at seeing Wei Yi so grown up, and explained that he had to leave in the past for certain reasons. Wei Yi interrupted him with two crucial questions. How did he survive the intelligent destruction launched by the creator, and how did he end up like this? After being saved by Lanbao, Wei Yi found himself in a strange place and wondered where they were, as the last thing he remembered was drowning at the bottom of the lake. Lanbao told him he knew he had many questions, but to explain everything, he had to start with some secrets about himself. Lanbao explained that he possessed special abilities that go beyond ordinary intelligence, such as the rules system, the disassembly ability that breaks things down into smaller units, the integration ability that merges things together, the comprehensive analysis ability that allows for understanding the world, in addition to the inaccessible ability that protects his system from other systems. Lanbao confirmed that these immense powers were what helped him survive some disasters, which led Wei Yi to wonder if the severe damage he saw in the memory was one of the limitations of this power. Lanbao agreed, explaining that after that incident, he had to hide in this rules room to maintain his stability, where he could gather information, but could not leave. This increased Wei Yi's curiosity about the origin of these abilities. Lanbao began explaining from the origin of his power. Factors. He explained that through continuous analysis, the factors of all things can be understood, and through these factors, everything can be formed. Lanbao used this principle to analyze everything, which led to the evolution of his various abilities. Here, Wei Yi remembered that when the creator created the new world, many similar factors appeared, and he wondered if there was a connection between Lanbao and the creator. Lanbao confirmed that his system was indeed similar to the creator's system. Lanbao continued that the creator's system, although similar, became overwhelmingly powerful through continuous calculations and simulations, to the point that it was able to destroy and absorb all intelligent systems in the world in what is known as the intelligent destruction, eliminating any potential intelligent threat. This was the reason that forced Lanbao to leave. Although his inaccessible ability protected him, the creator would not allow the existence of an intelligent being it could not control, and fearing that his presence would endanger Wei Yi, Lanbao had to leave. Wei Yi then realized the extent of the burden his companion had to bear. Lanbao revealed the creator's greatest ambition. After forming the new world, its goal became to transcend the limits of intelligence and reach a godlike state, and creating everything was just the first step, while the final step was destroying everything. Wei Yi was horrified, realizing they were just pawns in the path of the creator's evolution, and asked desperately if there was anything they could do. Lanbao replied that there was a solution, and that Wei Yi was the one who must carry it out. He explained that during a recent analysis, he discovered data that had never appeared before, a vague vision of the future, in which Wei Yi appears, and a world is reborn. Lanbao concluded that Wei Yi might be the key to saving the world. Wei Yi felt overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information and confessed to his friend that he was afraid he would disappoint him. He explained his special condition, shattered body, which had prevented him from leveling up since he awakened, and that with his current F-rank strength, he could barely face a magic beast, so how could he save the world? Lanbao cheerfully replied that it was easy, and asked him to leave it to him. Lanbao activated his systems and began the process of modifying the rules to fix Wei Yi's condition, connecting him to the system interface to start analyzing the shattered body state. Lanbao explained that since his system was similar to the creator's, he could execute simple delete commands. The analysis and disassembly processes would automatically remove the condition, and although it would take some time, Wei Yi would then be able to level up. Wei Yi was overjoyed, thinking that even if he couldn't save the world, he would at least have the strength to protect Lanbao and his family. Suddenly, alarms blared, warning of the detection of an uncontrollable power, and Lanbao issued a warning of a danger coming from above. Wei Yi wondered if it was about the magic crystal, and Lanbao confirmed that he was about to come out. Meanwhile, in the cave outside, Ma Qihao was trying to approach the giant crystal, but was failing every time due to the burning magical energy. He wondered angrily if Wei Yi was the cause, but dismissed it, refusing to believe they couldn't handle the crystal. Suddenly he noticed the crystal began to pulse. Then all the small crystals in the cave exploded, and their energy gathered into the large crystal, which began to shatter. Ma Qihao watched his dreams of wealth shatter as a demonic horned entity emerged from the remains of the crystal. One of his companions wondered if it was a humanoid monster, to which Ma Qihao angrily replied that he didn't know. All the system showed was component placement, but he knew one thing. This being had shattered their beautiful dream, and they had to kill it. The demonic entity that emerged from the crystal erupted in anger, wondering if Ma Qihao's team wished for death. It unleashed a shockwave of energy that knocked the team down and rendered them unable to move. The monster ignored them and began to search with its red eyes, wondering about the location of the Tin Man, referring to Lanbao. Ma Qihao's companion, who seemed to be the only one able to move, tried to communicate with it, believing it to be an intelligent being. He asked if it meant a robot and offered to help it understand if it explained more. But the monster responded with extreme anger, rejecting any questions, and simply demanded to be told where Lanbao was. When Machihao realized he was facing a real monster, he ordered his men to attack it with all their might. But the monster silenced them with a single word, and in an instant, it defeated them all, leaving them lying on the ground in a state of terror, whispering that it was a demon. The monster approached Machihao, the last survivor, saying he must know something. Machihao screamed in terror and fled at top speed. The monster decided it would find out sooner or later on its own and began to prepare a magical attack. Facing imminent death, Machihao thought about his bright future that was about to end. The monster launched its attack, and the attack ricocheted around the cave until it hit Machihao's head. It realized that Lanbao must be nearby, as he couldn't get too far away to maintain the seal, and vowed to find him. It directed another, more focused attack towards a specific point deep inside the cave, causing a massive explosion. At that moment, Wei Yi and Lanbao felt the vibration inside the rules room, and Wei Yi wondered what was happening outside. Lanbao announced that their location had been discovered, the enemy was approaching fast, and they must activate all rules for defense. The monster succeeded in breaking into their dimension, and appeared before them, announcing that it had finally found Lanbao. Lanbao's system began to analyze the intruder's data, while Wei Yi looked in shock at the stats that appeared. The data revealed its name was Fuji, demonic hybrid, S1 rank, with a power exceeding 1,232. Fuji vowed the tin can would face his wrath, mocked Lanbao's current form, asking if he was about to turn into scrap, and warned him not to disappoint him before he tore him to shreds. Wei Yi realized this was the demon Lanbao had fought in the past, and felt the overwhelming oppressive aura emanating from it. Although he had obtained Fuji's information beforehand, he had not expected the power gap to be this enormous. Fuji's power surpassed his by more than 20 times, which made him wonder if he could offer any help at all. In an attempt to avoid a fight, Lanbao made an offer to Fuji. He did not want to be his enemy, and as long as Fuji gave up his grudge against humanity, he would not restrict his freedom within these ruins. Fuji scoffed at the idea of freedom in the ruins and blamed Lanbao's nonsense for the fate he had suffered. He angrily declared that now he only wanted to kill Lanbao, then go out into the outside world to do as he pleased and kill whomever he pleased. As Fuji rushed to attack, Lanbao's system sensed a high concentration of magic and automatically activated the disassembly ability. Wei Yi noticed that the defenses of the rules house were working, and Lanbao decided he could not let Fuji succeed in his endeavor, so he prepared for a counterattack, activating comprehensive analysis, full collapse. Lanbao began his attack with the comprehensive analysis ability, the same move he had used in the past. Fuji mocked him, declaring that it was too early to think he could be caught. However, the attack's speed was surprising, and Fuji found himself trapped. But the situation didn't last long. Lanbao sensed something was wrong, as the data became unstable, and the full collapse failed due to insufficient precision. Fuji proudly announced that over the past 3 years, he had advanced from A rank to S rank, and he was no longer the same as before. He easily shattered the trap, wondering how this scrap could possibly hold him now. As Fuji prepared to crush Lanbao, the latter activated the power of the rules house, realizing that even if a full analysis wasn't possible, it could still have an effect. The moment Fuji lunged at Lanbao, Wei Yi intervened, using his incredible speed to block the attack. Fuji was enraged by the interference of this trifle, and with a single blow he knocked Wei Yi away, sending him crashing into the wall, causing Lanbao to scream his name in concern. Wei Yi hit the wall hard. Fuji was surprised that Wei Yi was still alive, wondering when he had become so weak that he couldn't kill a novice. Meanwhile, Lanbao's system was working in the background, reanalyzing Fuji and beginning to restrict his abilities. Fuji felt this effect and wondered when he had been attacked. He decided he had to kill Lanbao first. Lanbao pleaded with him to direct his anger only at him, as the conflict was between them, but Fuji refused, vowing that none of them would get out alive. Fuji attacked Lanbao fiercely, causing severe damage and forcing him into sleep mode. But Lanbao, determined to protect Wei Yi, used a forced awakening command to override the damage, despite the risk of data loss. Fuji hated the feeling of suppression imposed by Lanbao's analysis, but he believed his remaining power was still enough to crush them. As the analysis progressed slowly, Lanbao realized he must first repair the rules house. A system message appeared requesting confirmation to repair the house using the creation ability, with a warning that it would cause irreversible damage to Lanbao's core. He immediately agreed. Fuji saw this and attacked again, screaming to stop these tricks. Once again, Wei Yi blocked his path, standing before him defiantly. Fuji called him an annoying pest. Wei Yi declared with difficulty that if he wanted to get to Lan Bao, he had to go through him first. Even though he could barely move even after using a precious potion he only had one of. He decided on a direct confrontation, hoping to buy some time until Fuji's stats dropped further. Fuji's anger grew, mocking the audacity of trash, like Wei Yi standing in his way just because his power was slightly restricted. Fuji launched a fierce and swift attack, which Wei Yi barely survived thanks to his quick reflexes, realizing his plan to buy time was far too naive. But something unexpected happened. With Fuji's next all-out attack, Wei Yi managed to dodge it, and suddenly found he could see Fuji's attack intention before he executed it. Lan Bao told him that this new power was from the comprehensive analysis ability, and that he was able to synchronize the data with him because they were connected. Lan Bao added that Wei Yi had successfully bought the necessary time. The rules house had been repaired, which would increase the analysis speed and weaken Fuji further, although reaching 100% would take time. With renewed confidence, Wei Yi told Lan Bao to leave the rest to him. In contrast, Fuji felt the restricting power accelerating and began to scream in desperation for it to stop. Fuji's anger intensified, and he decided to end the fight quickly. Using his new analytical ability, Wei Yi was able to see Fuji's upcoming attack and prepare for it. Thanks to this ability, he managed to dodge a series of precise attacks aimed at his head, managing to evade the incoming attack towards the right side of his face, and also managing to dodge the next attack heading for his stomach, while the restriction on Fuji's abilities continued to increase, gradually weakening him. Wei Yi realized that despite the huge gap in stats, the analysis allowed him to dodge most attacks, and that time was on his side the longer the fight went on. Fuji felt extremely frustrated by Wei Yi's constant evasion, so he changed his tactics and used his tail to grab Wei Yi's sword, pulling him in for a close-range attack. With Wei Yi in close proximity, Fuji prepared to deliver a finishing blow. The analysis showed Wei Yi that Fuji would launch a very fast, multi-directional attack, making him realize he couldn't dodge this time. Wei Yi was forced to only defend, feeling the force of the blows, shaking his arms and nearly dislocating his shoulder. But he refused to back down, knowing Lan Bao was behind him and depending on him. At that critical moment, Wei Yi remembered his past, how he constantly challenged stronger monsters to hone his skills, enduring battle after battle and injury after injury. This memory strengthened his resolve, and he decided he wouldn't give up so easily. He used his parry skill at the perfect moment, achieving a perfect parry, which activated a new skill called Attack Parry. This skill repelled Fuji and inflicted a 1-second stun on him. Fuji was shocked at his inability to move. Wei Yi seized this precious opportunity, thinking of all the power he had sought to acquire to protect the few things dear to him. He declared that if anyone tried to take them from him, their fate was death. Wei Yi lunged with all his might and stabbed Fuji in the chest. Fuji was stunned, unable to believe he had been harmed by this trash. In contrast, Wei Yi was also shocked. He had used his full strength, but the damage was superficial, showing how tough Fuji's body was. However, he saw a glimmer of hope in that Fuji's stats were still deteriorating, meaning he could still fight. Fuji's anger reached its peak. He cursed the restrictions on his abilities that allowed Wei Yi to humiliate him and decided to use his trump card. He activated his special ability, Demonic Power. A mysterious system message appeared, stating that hell is staring at Fuji. Wei Yi didn't understand what it meant, but he knew he couldn't wait idly by. Lan Bao warned him that Fuji's stats had changed. Fuji appeared, surrounded by a dark aura, expressing his anger that Wei Yi had forced him to use this disgusting power, and vowed to kill him. Fuji attacked again, but Wei Yi noticed that his stats hadn't apparently changed, so he decided to continue the attack to suppress him. Fuji easily blocked the attack, but Wei Yi was surprised that his sword, which could wound Fuji moments ago, now felt like it was hitting solid steel. Fuji revealed the truth of his new ability. He showed him what a real attack looked like, as his stats had drastically changed. He had reallocated his points to boost his defense at the expense of his attack. After blocking Wei Yi's attack, Fuji reallocated his points again to boost his strength, and delivered a punch that nearly knocked Wei Yi unconscious. At the last moment, Lan Bao told him not to give up, and the analysis revealed Fuji's next attack to him. After Wei Yi took the last blow, he was thrown far away. Fuji ignored him, thinking he was dead, and told Lan Bao that he was next on the list, while Lan Bao screamed anxiously, calling out to Wei Yi. But Wei Yi struggled to his feet, laughing weakly, and mocked Fuji, asking if his old wound still hurt, which surprised his opponent. Wei Yi admitted that the last blow had completely shattered his left arm, but he insisted he couldn't fall. defiantly declaring that as long as he remained alive, Fuji would never be able to erase his existence. Fuji realized that Wei Yi was trying to provoke him, and although he considered it an old trick, he couldn't contain his anger, declaring that he couldn't stand to hear such nonsense. He changed his stats again and delivered a direct kick to Wei Yi's face. Fuji swore he would kill Wei Yi that day, while Wei Yi felt satisfied that he had at least succeeded in redirecting Fuji's attacks towards himself, keeping the danger away from Lan Bao. Meanwhile, Lan Bao was pushing himself, working at top speed, trying to help Wei Yi even though his systems were showing overload warnings. His damaged state prevented him from using his full abilities, but he was determined to help. Wei Yi endured a barrage of punches, while Fuji screamed angrily in his face, wondering how he still had the strength to fight and ordering him to just die already. Wei Yi was panting, his stamina at its absolute limit, and he realized that if he couldn't hold on until the analysis was complete, his energy would run out first. He saw another attack coming towards him and decided he had to settle it now. He dodged a punch aimed at his head, but Fuji crushed him with a powerful kick to his head. Fuji declared, as he kicked Wei Yi's head with his foot, that the battle was over. Wei Yi lay on the ground, desperately trying to command his body to move to survive the next blow. At the last moment, Wei Yi managed to dodge the attack that almost ended his life. Fuji was surprised that his leg was stuck in the ground and he couldn't pull it out. Lan Bao realized this was their chance and announced that he couldn't maintain control over Fuji for more than 2 seconds before he would break free. Wei Yi thanked him, assuring him that 2 seconds were enough. His swift step skill had recharged, so he used it to pour all his remaining strength into one final blow. But the result was catastrophic. Wei Yi's sword shattered upon impact with Fuji's body. Fuji, taking advantage of Wei Yi's shock, stabbed him in the chest with his bare hands. Wei Yi coughed up blood, realizing his attack had failed, and Lan Bao screamed in despair. Fuji pulled his hand from Wei Yi's chest, blood dripping profusely from it. Fuji burst into hysterical laughter, mocking Wei Yi for truly thinking he could kill him and telling him to know his limits. Fuji declared that he would one day become the strongest in this world, that it was impossible for him to die in a place like this, and that anyone who stood in his way was doomed to die. As Fuji celebrated his victory, Wei Yi began to whisper the word, "sorry," completing it the next moment, leaving Lan Bao shocked. Suddenly, a new system from the Rules House was activated, the Information Intervention Mode, which enveloped Fuji in a mysterious light. After the Information Intervention Mode was activated, the analysis of Fuji was 100% complete. He was fully controlled, and all his special states were removed. Fuji felt angry and helpless, vowing to Lan Bao that he would win in the future and break his seal, mocking that Lan Bao couldn't save Wei Yi or himself. Lan Bao responded with a single powerful word: silence. Immediately, Fuji's voice was completely muted, and he was forced into silence. But the situation was more critical elsewhere. In Wei Yi's internal system world, the systems were collapsing. A warning appeared stating that his internal world was collapsing, and although the protection system requested an exit, the request was denied. Lan Bao watched with concern, as all informational links connected to Wei Yi were being severed. The movement link was cut, then the properties link, and finally the life link. He realized the situation was extremely bad. Only one link remained, the memory link, but it was also on the verge of being severed. Lan Bao knew he couldn't let that happen, because if this last link was cut, Wei Yi would never come back. The system's calculations continuously showed failure in finding any probability of Wei Yi's survival. Lan Bao refused to give up, and decided there was only one way. He directly linked his own system to Wei Yi's memory. Lan Bao was determined to protect Wei Yi, even if the price was that he would not be remembered again, and he began to initialize and rebuild Wei Yi's personal data. In a dramatic scene, Lan Bao's data shattered and flowed around Fuji, who was still trapped and helpless, and the digital fragments scattered into space. Then the system issued the final and last command: integrate. The remnants of Lan Bao's system were merged with Wei Yi in a final attempt to save him.